Hello and welcome to Talking Europe. The European Union sees Romania as one of its frontline states when it comes to the war in Ukraine. The country of 19 million people, a member of both the EU and NATO, has a land and sea border with Ukraine of more than 600 kilometres. It's been a transit hub for weapons supplies to Ukraine, and hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians have passed through Romania, with more than 130,000 being granted temporary protection in the country. Romania also borders Moldova, with which it has a common language, as well as shared concerns about the fallout from the war in neighbouring Ukraine. Well, my guest today is Viktor Negrescu, a Romanian politician from the Social Democratic Party. He's a member of the European Parliament, and he was Minister Delegate for European Affairs in the government of Romania between 2017 and 2018. He joins me from Bucharest today. Mr. Negrescu, thank you so much for being my guest on the programme. The European Union has just celebrated Europe Day, May the 9th, which is meant to mark peace and unity on the European continent. And in the context of those celebrations, you argued that Europe has to give itself more tools to meet the challenges of the future. What tools do you mean?
I think the European Union has shown unity since the start of the war in Ukraine. And therefore, we provided a lot of support for Ukraine, for Republic of Moldova, but also for the frontline countries. Nevertheless, it seems that we don't have all the adequate tools that are necessary to tackle the current challenges, meaning, for instance, on the defense side, being capable, in developing, the instrument that will allow Europe to have a stronger capacity at that level. In the same time, when it comes to the financial support that we are providing to the countries in need. Well, we noticed that, we provide a lot of grants, but most of the sums are loans. Therefore, meaning that we don't have actually the financial capacity that we currently need. In the same time, our countries are facing important transformations on the digital side, on the green side. And for all of that, we need more instruments to be capable of actually leading the process.
But overall, since the COVID crisis, the EU has actually developed a lot of instruments, the Recovery and Resilience Package, the Net Zero Industry Act, the Critical Raw Materials Act. And when it comes to Ukraine, it's made this shift, which a lot of people have said is a landmark measure, the ASAP Act, the Ammunition Support Act for Ukraine. You seem to be somehow downplaying this measure.
I think those are important measures and they are valuable and we need to implement them. But what I'm also focusing on the details of the implementation of those key initiatives. So on the recovery plan, we don't have enough of common initiatives. Romania has its own recovery plan, but Bulgaria has another recovery plan, and they are not linked, and we are neighboring countries in the region. We are not cooperating with Poland, we are not cooperating with France, and France is not cooperating enough with Germany, despite the good relation that they have. So developing the European dimension when it comes to those challenges is key also within the recovery framework. Also, we are now trying to invest more in what I spoke about earlier in the defense part, in giving us the capacity to produce ammunition, for instance, but we are doing that only 1 year after the start of the war, so we are a little bit in delay. We have strategies, good strategies at European level, but we also have to look at the details in order to make sure that we deliver what citizens expect from us.
I'd like to ask you about the upcoming summit of the European political community in Moldova. Is this a stepping stone towards a multi-speed Europe, which is something that you oppose, or is it actually an opportunity?
I think it's good to have such a big event in the Republic of Moldova and have so many leaders attending the meeting. Romania is providing all the support that Moldova needs to organize this important event on the logistics side, on security side. And again, it's about details. We need to focus on that, and we are focusing on that. Nevertheless, this platform will allow us to have a better interaction with the countries trying to get in the European Union, but this should not replace the process of integration. We have to offer a European perspective for Ukraine, for Republic of Moldova, for the countries in the Western Balkans, and they have to get in the European Union, not in another platform.
Do you think the political community then, is it a way of making sure that that accession process stays on track, or a way of delaying things?
I think the political community should be a way to help those countries. For the time being, of course, we are not there. We are having a dialogue, is good. Of course, there are different ways of having a dialogue, especially with countries that have received already the candidate status. And we also need to move from, nice words to concrete elements. So, for instance, we have two new candidate countries, Ukraine and Republic of Moldova. Normally, they should get access to the pre-accession funds. They don't have yet access to those pre-accession funds. There are some countries that are not willing, actually, to amend the European budget to provide them with those resources that are necessary to make the reforms in order to bring them closer to the European Union. We cannot replace what is already in place. We also need to continue the dialogue and, again, not create formats that will keep those countries out of the EU.
But there's an agreed process, though, isn't there, Viktor Negrescu? I mean, there's regular reports on the progress of these different countries. So there's a process that's agreed by the countries and by Brussels.
Of course, and this process is open and transparent and exists there for many years. So I don't see any purpose in replacing it in any way or in offering another perspective to those countries.
You've mentioned Moldova a couple of times. On a more military dimension, if you will, the defense ministers of Moldova, Romania and Ukraine met a few weeks ago to discuss the security situation. Clearly, these three countries are trying to develop closer ties. What do you expect that to lead to in practical terms?
So Romania is providing, of course, support for the Republic of Moldova and Ukraine in the current international framework, of course, set up at EU level, but also set up at NATO level. So we try to do our best. We are a neighboring country. We are a key country when it comes to the support that is being provided to those respective countries. So, of course, we try to engage in different forms of cooperation, especially when it comes to issues like border protection, civil protection, developing of equipment capacities and production capacities related to defense elements. And for that, of course, we need support. So this initiative goes and adds to the already existing formats of dialogue. And I think it's good that Romania is doing this effort. And hopefully other countries are going to join the initiative that these three countries are willing to develop in the near future.
Let's talk about the grain issue, the question of Ukrainian grain imports. Some countries, of course, announced bans on those grain imports under pressure from domestic agricultural producers. Romania is one of a number of countries that is supporting so-called exceptional safeguard measures. Just talk us through the latest and what Romania is going to be doing going forward on this issue.
So I will start with the beginning by saying that Romania was the first country to create specific transit lines for the grains going out of Ukraine to transit toward the beneficiary countries. We have offered specific support when it comes to transportation, when it comes to the use of our port at the Black Sea. And this was key for the success of making sure that the grains reach those countries that are in need. 60% of the grains that are exported by Ukraine goes to Romania. So this is an important issue for us. Despite this fact, of course, we acknowledge the fact, all the countries in the region, that unfortunately some of the grains stays within our countries. Sometimes it stays because they have buyers. Sometimes, of course, we have people that take advantage of the current situation, buy the grains at a low cost, and in the same time flood the market without making sure that the quality of the grains fit the EU regulations. So therefore, of course, Romania has joined other member states in asking for additional support for their farmers. There have been two financial decisions to support farmers in our region. This is not covering the entire expenses and the cost of the challenges that we are currently facing. In the same time, we requested to the European Union to limit the access of those grains within our countries in order to make sure that we develop new tools to verify the grains, but also develop new mechanism with the support of the European Union in order to make sure those grains reach the market that needs it, especially the countries from Africa, and making sure that the ones that take advantage of the current situation are not being allowed to do so anymore.
So are you satisfied then with the current measures, that is to say, the monitoring system that the European Commission has proposed to make sure that these grains are sealed and monitored on their way in transit? Is that a convincing measure?
I think the decision comes quite late, and it's good that it has been adopted. In the same time, it's up to our countries to make sure this is applied. So it's a European decision applied actually by member states. So we are willing to do the work, and we think more efforts should be done in this regard, in the dialogue, especially with the companies that are buying the grains, which are mainly international companies, making sure that they also send the grains in the markets that need it. This is very important, of course, for Africa. It's important for the grains to reach the markets that are expecting them to come. In the same time, there have been other proposals, for instance, for the European Union maybe also to intervene by buying some of the grains and sending it through its humanitarian aid programs in the countries in need. So there are different tools. There is a list of proposals that has been made by member states from the region in this regard, and we hope that the Commission is listening to it. Interestingly, some part of the Commission are willing to listen and discuss with us, but we have maybe other commissioners that maybe are in delay with the realities on the ground.
We'll have to end it there. Thank you so much for being my guest, Viktor Negrescu, former Minister Delegate for European Affairs in the Romanian government. And don't go away, because in part 2, my colleague Douglas Herbert will be hosting his panel of MEPs focusing on this very issue of grain and Ukrainian agricultural exports. Do stay with us.